But now they were going to be staying in their son's apartment, and they were going to see their son's show. So we walked through the little foyer of my little building, and my dad and I picked them up in the airport, and my mother, of course, she was going, so there was enough luggage. And my father said, "So where's the elevator?" I said, "There is none, Dad." He said, "But don't you live on the 5th floor?" I said, "Yes." He said, "How are we going to get up there? And how are we going to get all these bags up there?" I said, "We're going to walk and we're going to carry them." Now, in those days, my dad smoked between 2 and 3 packs of Benson and Hedges a day. He tried to quit. He chewed gum. He did all kinds of things. Everybody smoked, but nothing worked. So after we carried those bags up to the 5th floor in the summer with no air conditioning, my dad sat on the couch. And while I was showing my mother all around the apartment, it was a long time before my father could talk. Every day of his visit, when he would come back to my apartment after a day in New York, he would look at those stairs in my apartment building as if they were Mount Everest. And every day, after walking up those 60 stairs to my apartment, because they only went down and came up once every day, it was a long time before he could read or talk. So, after about 8 days, they went home. We talked on the phone a lot, and I'm sure I went home at Christmas, but I didn't really get to see them on my own turf or visit with them until the next summer when they came back for a visit. I was still living in the same apartment. I was still doing the same show. But on this second visit, my dad, too, was different. This time, he fairly bounded up the 60 stairs. He then took my dog, Sadiddy. You remember Sadiddy? He took my dog, Sadiddy, down the 60 stairs for a walk. He came back up the stairs, laughing and talking with breath to spare. My mother said the stairs had done it. When my father went back home, he stopped smoking cold turkey. Now, this dad's story is not a condemnation of smokers. This is a story about my dad's resolve. My dad loved New York, my dad loved me, and he was resolved to be a part of my miracle there. It gave him the strength to focus and accomplish a miracle of his own. Have you ever noticed that when you really resolve to finally do something that you've been putting off for a long time, other good things start to come out of it? It seemed like it was a hard decision when you got started, maybe cleaning out a closet or a drawer, or getting in touch with a relative you haven't talked to for a while, or resolving an issue you had with a friend with whom you drifted away, or other good things. But other things start to come out of your finally forward action. You start to find items you thought you'd lost. You start to remember details you thought you had forgotten. You start to solve problems that you thought were unsolvable. When the woman touched Jesus, she had been bleeding. She had been dying for 12 years. No one could cure her. She was chronically weak and anemic. People had probably cast her out of society. You know how we do when we can't fix you the way we want you to be cured. Sometimes we just give up on you as already dead and wait for somebody to call and say that you finally died. This woman had been bleeding continually, and no one could help her. Besides being physically sick, she was ritually unclean. No one could touch her, or they would not be allowed in the temple. What this woman with the issue of blood didn't know was that this miracle worker, Jesus, was on his way to heal the daughter of the synagogue leader, Jairus. The woman with the issue of blood lived on the street. Jairus' daughter was the privileged child of a temple official. And although the two women didn't know each other, the women had something in common. They were both dying, and no one had been able to heal them. Now, no one knows why one person dies and another person has the strength to go on living. No one knows. The temple leader's daughter, in all of her wealth and all of her privilege, actually died before Jesus could get to her, and the story goes, Jesus had to resurrect her. But the woman with the issue of blood existing on the street had a deep resolve that 12 years of failure did not tamper or dampen. As Jesus made his way through the crowd, she knew that she would not be welcomed into any kind of Bible or Torah study with open arms as the young man in Charlotte was welcomed in. She might actually hurt those respectable people who had gathered to see and learn from the Master. If she tried to go into a place where they were studying the Holy Scripture, she would have probably been stoned. But still, she pressed on. As Jesus made his way through the crowd, she pressed her way to him, knowing that her community was not aware enough and not compassionate enough to provide affordable health care to every single person who needed it. She had spent all that she had by herself, and she had no help. She was destitute, and still she pressed on. As Jesus made his way through the crowd toward Jairus' dead daughter, the woman with the issue of blood knew the community's theology. The fact that she couldn't get well meant that God was punishing her for being different. She didn't have the right to marry or raise children as other people had, and no law was ever going to change that. She was vile. She was disgusting. Respectable life in the community was between a healthy man and a healthy woman, not a woman with an issue. No, in the community's mind, she was dirty and stinking and condemned to hell just for being who she was. But still, towards Jesus, she pressed on. So Jesus said, "Who touched me?" And when Jesus looked into this outcast woman's eyes, those eyes that nobody had bothered to look into or care for 12 years, he saw beyond that fear. He saw a relationship and an assurance, a confidence and a belief that was so powerful it had pulled energy from him. The scripture said that she already felt the healing when she touched him. So when Jesus spoke to her, he was stating the obvious. He said, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. You are healed of your disease." Our wonderful country that we all love so much is an uneven country. People of different races and different orientations are working out their issues, screaming at the president, even as he walks into a press conference celebrating their issues. But it is not the president, nor the Congress, nor even the august Supreme Court who just grant the desires of people's hearts to them because they favor one group over another. It is people constantly and consistently asking and praying, demanding and pressing over and over again in faith that makes this process that we call America work. That is what America is, and that is what America must continue to celebrate. Did you notice on Friday when the Supreme Court decision came down, people standing around the Supreme Court weren't singing freedom songs. They broke out singing the Star-Spangled Banner. Not taking over, included. Diana Naya is a long-distance swimmer. She's a brilliant writer, an evolved woman. Any of you heard of her? Brilliant woman. And a fascinating motivational speaker who actually thinks she's an atheist. She tells the story of meeting an elderly woman after one of her talks. They hugged, and when the woman's sleeves went up, Naya saw the numbers tattooed on the woman's arm. And Naya said, "Oh, you are a Holocaust survivor." The old Jewish woman who had spent her life being a professor told Naya the story of being accosted from the family home when she was 3 years old. Her father was shot and killed right in front of her for refusing to cooperate with the authorities. Her mother and her older sister were marched off to an internment camp, and she never saw them again. And at the age of 3, as a little girl, this old professor was taken to be the concubine of a soldier until the war was over and she found that she had cousins with whom she could live in France. When Naya, also a molestation survivor, apologized to the professor for the comparatively innocuous stories of survival that she had told during her talk, for which she had received in excess of $10,000, the professor said, "Don't ever apologize for who you are. And don't ever apologize for what you have endured in your life. Everyone who is alive is a survivor who must accept what they go through and then bury their experiences deep in their heart and never wear them out in public on our skin." The old professor then said this: "That way we can remember and discover again that no matter what we go through, life is designed to be wonderful, and that we are the miracles that we must insist that people experience on the way to becoming the miracles that they themselves are. Life is wonderful, and we are the miracles that we must insist that people experience on the way to becoming the miracles that they themselves are." Relationship with each other is everything. It is the church. It is God. And that is what communities are called to be. We are the individuals and communities of miracles that people must experience, and we must insist that they experience on the way to uncover and discover the miracles that they themselves truly are. Would you pray? God, we sit in this place, and each one of us has a survival story to tell. Each one of us joins hands and sheds tears and sings song, and each one of us has ancestors in our past who would not approve of us being the family and friends that we are in this place. And yet it is through their stories and their miracles that we have journeyed to this spot. We revere and we honor them, but we continue to stretch our wings and move forward, always being inclusive, always granting the stranger welcome, always making a place for each other as we join hands and journey towards you. We thank you so much for another opportunity to be together. We thank you so much that we are children of God. Your Son's name.